Hello, and thank you for joining the training today on LI-COR's latest solutions for long-term solid gas flux measurements. Today, we'll be reviewing the 8250 extension manifold, an accessory to the LI-8250 multiplexer, as well as some of the latest applications when using the multiplexer. When we launched the LI-8250 multiplexer back in 2020, we knew that by being able to connect up to 8 long-term chambers to the system, this would serve a vast majority of the research needs that we've seen out in the market. But we do have researchers who come to us who want to look beyond 8 chambers. We saw this even with our previous system with the LI-8150 multiplexer, that while a researcher may start with 4, 6, or 8 chambers, year after year, researchers will come back to LI-COR and want to continue to expand their systems by ordering more chambers that they can use out at their field research site. This allows us then to address this new level of flexibility when it comes to long-term solid gas flux measurements that we may be limited to with some previous systems, as well as limitations in competitive systems at only being able to use 8, 10, or 12 long-term chambers at a single site. So to address this, we're launching the 8250 extension manifold. This manifold, as I mentioned, is an accessory to the LI-8250 multiplexer. It will connect to one chamber port on the multiplexer and allow that single chamber port to be extended out to an additional 8 long-term chambers. So when looking at this diagram, you can see that by connecting this extension manifold, we can now expand our total number of chambers connected to a single LI-8250 multiplexer from 8 chambers that we've been able to do today up to 36 chambers in total. That accounts for 4 of the extension manifolds, and on the other 4 chamber ports available, we can connect a single 8200/104 long-term chamber still. What does this mean for field research? We're now able to expand these long-term measurements up to a footprint of 2,800 square meters. As you can see from this image, this now lets us look out across different field sites, being able to look at different treatments, different crops, different fertilization techniques, and the impact across these field sites on what it means for the greenhouse gas emissions. Let's dig into the details now on what the 8250-01 extension manifold will look like. As you can tell from this image, it's identical to the LI-8250 multiplexer. The temperature operating range, the humidity operating range, even the flow rate to and from the chambers will all be very similar to what a researcher is already getting from their LI-8250 multiplexer. There is a pump in each extension manifold. It's the same diaphragm pump that we use in the multiplexer today. And these extension manifolds will be powered and communicated to with the multiplexer, and you could see the additional power consumption that will come from using an extension manifold on site. As mentioned, each extension manifold will be both powered and have their communication protocols managed by the LI-8250 multiplexer. This will be using the same cable hose assembly that you would use if you were only attaching a long-term chamber. So the same 15-meter cable hose assembly that we offer today when attaching a long-term chamber to the multiplexer. As you can see from this side panel of the extension manifold, you'll have the connection point for that cable and hose assembly, as well as the air in and air out coming from the multiplexer to the extension manifold. On the other side of the extension manifold, it looks like a duplicate to a multiplexer. This is where you'll be able to connect 8 additional long-term chambers at your site either the opaque or the clear chambers, or a digital custom chamber if a customer so chooses. For each long-term chamber that you're connecting to an extension manifold, you will again use the same 15-meter cable hose assembly that you use today for connecting a long-term chamber to the multiplexer. As we look inside the extension manifold, you'll see that it looks like a simplified version of the multiplexer. You have your gas switching manifold to go between the chambers, the diaphragm pump, which again is the same pump that they'd be using with the multiplexer, and then a ready and power light that will light up when connected to an LI-8250 multiplexer. When they're using an extension manifold with a long-term monitoring system, they'll be able to configure both the extension manifold as well as their measurement sequence within the LI-8250 multiplexer software. There will be a few updates for being able to manage this, in particular for how we look at the different ports that a chamber may be connected to that will come with the latest version of the multiplexer software. That port numbering system will give the multiplexer port first, followed by the port being used on the extension manifold. For example, if I have an extension manifold connected to port 1 on my multiplexer, and then have a long-term chamber connected on port 8 of the extension manifold, the port given will be 1-8. So that represents multiplexer port 1, followed by the extension manifold port. You can see this in more detail as you set the configuration for the extension manifold within the software itself. In this example, we're taking port 1 of the multiplexer and attaching an extension manifold. From there, on the first 4 ports of the extension manifold, we'll have a long-term chamber connected to each of those ports. As you move to the right and you set your sampling sequence, then for each observation that you set and the duration that you want for that observation, you'll define not only the multiplexer port number, but if you have an extension manifold as well, the extension manifold port number that your chamber will be connected to. Now, as I look at my home screen for the multiplexer, I can see that I've got an extension manifold connected to port 8 of my multiplexer with a long-term chamber that's currently sampling on the second port of the extension manifold. This same hierarchy will be seen as well in the diagnostics, where for this multiplexer, you can see on the 8 available ports of the LI-8250 multiplexer, I have 4 ports with an extension manifold connected to each, and then a single long-term chamber connected to the remaining 4 ports on the multiplexer. I can dig into more details on each of those extension manifolds then, being able to see specifically which chambers then are connected to that extension manifold and know if everything is still operating properly throughout the system. In addition to launching the extension manifold, we'll also be providing new applications for the multiplexer, including flask sampling. Flask sampling is designed for researchers who are taking measurements of flask, be it a mason jar or other type of container. These are usually lab-based measurements, but they utilize the multiplexer in order to switch between those flasks and measure the evolution of gases within each of those flasks for their gas of interest. With the ability to measure additional trace gases with this multiplexer, this will continue to be a need and a research want for those looking at these flask measurements. We'll be releasing the 8250-660 flask sampling kit. That same kit will be able to be used with either the LI-8250 multiplexer or the 8250-01 extension manifold. It allows every chamber port to be available for a flask measurement, so a total of 36 flask measurements with a single LI-8250 multiplexer system with 4 of the extension manifolds. As mentioned, they will need that flask sampling kit for each manifold they are using. It's going to include a secondary purge pump for flowing air through flask when measurements are not taking place, as well as a thermistor board for attaching and recording temperature data. Each kit will include some additional connectors and tubing as well, and they're both user installable in the multiplexer and extension manifolds. As I look at a flask sampling kit here installed in the extension manifold, I want to point out a few of the key items that will be included in the kit. That includes the secondary pump. It has a pump mount, so it will attach over the top of the pump included with either the multiplexer or extension manifold. In addition to the left of the pump, you can see an additional board highlighted. That's the thermistor board where they can attach either a LI-COR given temperature thermistor or a user supplied thermistor. One important note for flask measurements. As mentioned with the extension manifold, typically power and communication will always be supplied through the LI-8250 multiplexer. If they are taking flask measurements on an extension manifold, they will need to use the alternate power that's located within the case itself using the 8250-772 indoor power supply. For flask measurements, we mentioned that these are largely indoor in a lab setting, so we expect mains power to be readily available for powering that second pump using this power supply. But you will need to order that power supply separate of the flask sampling kit for any extension manifold they will be using. A few additional optional items to keep in mind if someone is ordering a flask sampling kit. As mentioned, we will have a thermistor available. That part number is given here. If you see the highlighted valve that's on the case right now, the same valve is located on both the multiplexer as well as the extension manifold. And it can be removed so that researchers can wire their thermistors through the case instead of having the case lid open when plugging in their thermistors or their indoor power supply if they're using an extension manifold. They also can provide their own user supplied thermistor if they so choose. With the launch of the new extension manifold, we did want to highlight our key selling features when it comes to our long-term soil gas flux solutions. With the multiplexer, it comes down to research flexibility, the ability to grow their research not only in the gases they may want to measure, but in the amount of chambers they may want to use on site or the applications they want to use the system for. As we see research move beyond CO2, we know that having a multiplexer that can easily adapt to other trace gases is important. It also provides an opportunity for these research groups that want to look at a variety of different gases or different applications amongst groups to be able to come together to purchase a single system. One of the key LI-COR advantages when it comes to the new LI-8250 multiplexer is the ability to process fluxes on site from LI-COR analyzers. This includes for CO2, methane, as well as nitrous oxide. These fluxes are integrated into the summary files, and you can easily connect to one device to see the instrument status, diagnostics, and fluxes in real time. In addition to those key advantages, we have a system built for field research. We are truly redefining field research with the ability to connect up to 36 clear or opaque long-term chambers. That's more than a quarter of a hectare that they'll be able to measure from. In addition to this, we continue to provide the patented chamber vent technology, as well as the access to summary files and your data wherever you need them located. So you know exactly when you need to go into the field by being able to view the data, not only from your phone or tablet, but when communicating those files over a cellular modem from your office. SoilFlex Pro continues to be a key selling feature as well. As we mentioned with launch of the LI-8250 Multiplexer, SoilFlex Pro provides the same essential tools, but with a new user experience. As researchers grow their sites to a number of long-term chambers, or even a number of different greenhouse gases, SoilFlex Pro becomes critical for that further evaluation and visualization of their flexes. It's designed for the QA/QC and easily revising those parameters in a large data set. In particular with trace gases, it allows for easier processing and handling of those multiple gases. SoilFlex Pro can now process files from any LI-COR SoilFlex solution. That includes the LI-8250 Multiplexer, the Smart Chamber, the 6800-09 soil chamber used with the LI-6800 photosynthesis system, the LI-8100A system, and third-party analyzer integration with any of these LI-COR soil systems. With the launch of the Extension Manifold, we will be releasing SoilFlex Pro 5.2. That will allow for researchers with an LI-8250 multiplexer and an Extension Manifold to easily process their data. You can see here from this example data set that we had 2 extension manifolds connected on port 1 and port 7 of our multiplexer, with up to 15 chambers then sampling across this field site. As we release the extension manifold, we also want to take this opportunity to review competitors within long-term soil gas flux measurements. We continue to see companies market against our combined hardware and gas analysis solutions for soil flux measurements. As we've discussed, we are the only company that provides both the greenhouse gas measurements that researchers want to take at these soil sites with the hardware needed for long-term measurements. We're starting to see these companies try to pair together the hardware and gas analyzer solutions, but none are able to provide that combined solution for research that gives you those fully processed fluxes on site and that ease of use of only connecting to one system on site. One common question that we're getting lately is from EOSense. They are a hardware competitor and they market their integration with Picaro, GasMet, and ABB for long-term soil gas flux solutions. We have researchers who are trying to compare the 8200-104C, which is the clear long-term chamber, with their large footprint long-term chamber that they use for NEE measurements. A few key points to keep in mind if you're speaking to researchers who are comparing our chambers with these EOSense chambers. First, they have an incredibly high power draw of 17 watts in motion when in comparison to our chambers. In addition, LI-COR opaque and clear chambers provide 2 times more surface area to volume ratio, which allows for easier measurements of small fluxes. As we've discussed over the past few months, when we look at trace gases, in particular N2O and methane, oftentimes these fluxes can be very low at field sites. So being able to measure these small fluxes and being able to measure them quickly is often a great need for researchers that are looking at expanding beyond CO2 measurements. If you do have researchers interested in these large chambers, I would point them towards the 8200-104C clear chamber in comparison to these. In addition, make sure you keep in mind that EOSense does not have a field deployable multiplexer. They require the lid to be open on their multiplexer, so it cannot be deployed long-term in the field without additional shelter and infrastructure. With the launch of the Extension Manifold, we will now be able to sample from up to 36 chambers, whereas EOSense can measure up to 12 ports. Again, that ability to view fluxes on sites, as well as to be able to view the concentration, diagnostics, and hardware all from one software continue to keep us unique and set us apart from these competitive systems. So a few additional key points here. Again, they do not have a field deployable multiplexer. The LI-8250 multiplexer was built to be left outdoors with low power requirements, as well as the ability to remotely communicate with the system so you know exactly when you need to go into the field. We also provide those integrated software solutions for viewing diagnostics and concentration data, and we provide the fluxes on site. Another question that we've gotten recently is regarding custom or user-built chambers. Researchers can continue to create their own custom digital chambers for use with the LI-8250 multiplexer. This allows them to use the multiplexer for data management from the gas analyzers, as well as managing the gas flow between each chamber. There is an application note that's available from our support site that goes into more details on attaching a custom chamber to the LI-8250 multiplexer. As we look at the market launch for the extension manifold, we do view this as an accessory to the LI-8250 multiplexer, but a great opportunity to talk to researchers about how they can really expand their measurements in the field. A few key points for selling the extension manifold. As mentioned previously, each extension manifold will include its own 15-meter cable assembly for connecting it directly to the LI-8250 multiplexer. In addition, each extension manifold will come with the same spares kit that's included with the LI-8250 multiplexer. The extension manifold should be quoted as a separate line item from other packages that a researcher may be ordering. So if they are interested in 4 chambers or 8 chambers, you can use the sales packages that are already defined for the LI-8250 multiplexer, then add in the extension manifold and the additional numbers of chambers and cable assemblies that they would need for expanding their system beyond 8 chambers. Some of the other marketing updates that will be happening in the coming weeks with the launch. We will be providing a new product tile and web page specific to the 8250-01 extension manifold and what it can be used for. In addition, to help researchers know how they can expand their systems, we will be launching a Design Your Own System web page. This will allow for researchers to select if they want to take survey or long-term measurements, be able to select which gases of interest they have, and that will be across all of the greenhouse gases that we provide. But it won't provide every single detail that may need to be covered with a soil flux system. For example, it won't go into detail on every SDI-12 sensor a user may want to connect, or a thermocouple or additional thermistor probe they may need, as well as power needs that they may have at their site if they're using AC mains power, or if they need to look at an off-grid power option such as solar panels. But this is designed to help with the conversation. So as you talk to researchers, they can see how these systems would really build out depending on the gases that they're interested in measuring, as well as for long-term measurements, how many chambers they want to attach to a single system. In addition, we will be providing updates to the Soil Flux Systems brochure. This is a comprehensive brochure that will cover both survey and long-term solutions. We'll be including the extension manifold into the brochure, as well as new long-term multiplex data sets. These are great examples that you can show researchers on the power of taking these greenhouse gas measurements across multiple chambers and across a span of time, and what you may be able to see happen at your field site. We'll have additional collateral available, including buyer's letters, competitor comparisons, both for EOSINs and PP systems. New images of the extension manifold when used with the multiplexer will be available through PhotoShelter. We also will have email campaigns that will be starting to researchers to let them know about these new features, and updates to the SoilFlux sales presentation and price catalogs will be coming soon. I also want to highlight a few new support resources that are available for the SoilFlux systems. This includes 2 new application notes, including using custom digital chambers with the LI-8250 Multiplexer and integrating 2 trace gas analyzers with a smart chamber. We will have additional application notes coming soon, including taking long-term chamber measurements with a single 8200-104 long-term chamber, and a flask sampling application note that will go into further details on attaching and taking flask measurements with the LI-8250 Multiplexer and Extension Manifold. With the Extension Manifold launch, you will also receive new software and manuals for the LI-8250 Multiplexer, as well as those software updates for SoilFlux Pro for processing the data. As we finish, I want to highlight a few questions that have already been asked regarding the extension manifold. We have had a few researchers who wonder if they've already purchased an LI-8250 multiplexer, if they would be able to use the 8250-01 extension manifold with it, or will they have to do any sort of upgrade on their multiplexer. If you have a researcher who has purchased an LI-8250 multiplexer, they will be able to use it with the extension manifold. They will simply need to upgrade to the latest software before they use the extension manifold. The extension manifold, though, will not work if they try to power it or communicate with it separate of the LI-8250 multiplexer. Researchers will have to configure it, power, and communicate through the LI-8250 multiplexer to use the extension manifold. They also will not be able to upgrade an extension manifold to an LI-8250 multiplexer. Another question that we've received is if they could use an extension manifold with their LI-8100A system to extend beyond 16 chambers. Unfortunately, no, the extension manifold will only be compatible with the LI-8250 multiplexer. For those that may have a flask kit installed, they may wonder if they can still use the multiplexer for SoilFlux measurements. The answer is yes. You will be able to use the LI-8250 or the extension manifolds for soil gas flux measurements, even if you have a flask kit installed. It simply will not use the secondary purge pump unless it is programmed in the software. Lastly, we have had some questions on if we still have chambers or multiplexers available for the LI-8100A systems. We are down to our final few survey chambers, as well as our final few LI-8100As and multiplexers that will be available. If you do have a researcher or interested in ordering one of these, we'd ask that you please contact sales before ordering so they can see what we still have available. Thank you all for your time and learning more about the extension manifold, as well as the flask sampling applications. Please let me know if you have any questions as you work through this training material or through the other collateral that we'll make available. And we look forward to hearing more from researchers on their response and their excitement for these new features. Thank you so much.